Welcome back to our program, Hollywood Structured. As some of you already know, our program is designed to help the young people who wish to enter the entertainment field, may it be music, nightclub work, theater, stage, or film. It is also designed to help the parents and the educators of those young people to help them understand their wants, their needs, and the pitfalls and the traps they may fall into unless thoroughly acquainted with the inner workings of Hollywood. Today, as our special guest, we had someone who, when he was young, really wanted to be a forest ranger, wanted to be in the outdoors. Well, he is now a well-known production sound mixer, am I saying that right?
That's correct.
Mixer, for such shows as Undercover, Scruples, Tango and Cash, Heart to Heart, Houston Nights, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, and many, many more. He has combined wanting to be on the outdoors with sound mixing. We will show you why. His name is Don Matthews. Hello, Don.
I'm glad to be here today, Lillian. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Now, before Don shares his expertise and his experiences with us, I would like to speak to you today about your voice. I have encountered many young students who do not do anything for their voice. They have a 4-note range, and that's all there it is. And I'm speaking particularly to young ladies out there. I have many students who will do a scene, and the voice will be screeching, pitching, nagging, and be very unpleasant. And when you ask them to lower their voice, they say, well, I can't do it, I really can't do it. There is an exercise that I give some of my students, which is very simple. If you have a piano, or if you have a friend who has a piano, or somebody who has a keyboard, the one thing that you can do to help yourself is find on the piano the key that matches your voice. For example, my voice is so I will find that key, and I will use a sentence like I will improve the range of my voice, hint, hint. Plunk that note and go, I will improve the range of my voice, go 1 note higher. I will improve the range of my voice, 1 note higher. I will improve the range of my voice, and you do that for about 10 notes, which you don't think you have, but you do. It's just you never use them. Then do the opposite. Go back to your natural tone, and then go down. I will improve the range of my voice, I will improve the range of my voice, and go. And you can go probably about, for you, probably about 4 or 5 more notes down. So you can see that you will end up having a range of probably 18 notes. Now, I am not saying that you cannot use the screechy voice or the nagging voice or the high-pitching voice, because you can. Very often in comedy series, there will be 1 or 2 actresses who will use that comedic tool of having a high-pitched voice. However, if they do not improve the range of their voice, they will be stuck in that one role. They will not be able to function in a dramatic show because they will not be able to offer a range of emotions or a range of subtext. I will tell you, young ladies over there, how you probably got in that groove, in that rut of using only a very small voice. Is because when you were a child and you did something wrong, and your voice as a child is a little higher than when you mature, you got away with murder with mommy and daddy saying, oh, but daddy, I didn't do it, and your voice was way up. Oh, mommy, I promise I won't do it again. Do you love me? Oh, please. And that's what happened. So, as you grow up, you do the same thing with your friends. You want your friend to say, oh, please, please, and you keep that high-pitched voice. And then later on with your boyfriend, you do that. Well, learn to control your voice. Learn to expand the range of your voice. You will be a better actor. you also will work more in comedy and in drama also. Well, enough of me now. Let's go to the man who is an expert with sound, Don. And my first question to you, Don, will be, where were you born? You like the outdoors so much, so I need to know where you were born.
I was born in Canada, Toronto, Canada.
Yes?
Lived there till I was about 20.
Were you in love with Forest Ranger because of the costume that they wore?
No, I just love no, not really. I just love the outdoors. I was pretty active in scouting in those days, and I became an Eagle Scout. In Canada, they call them a King Scout or a Queen Scout, equivalent to our Eagle Scout. I became an Eagle Scout. And fortunately, the scoutmaster who was my scoutmaster was single, was very expert in affairs of the outdoors, and taught us to live off the land, basically.
Oh, really?
Yes, to canoe. He knew how to canoe just like an Indian did. You know, he learned from the Indians. So I got to love the outdoors very much. We used to go on canoe trips up in northern Ontario and spend 2 or 3 weeks in that sea of Seoul with maybe just 6 or 8 of us boys from the troop, and fish and camp out and live under the stars and basically live off the land.
Really?
And, we'd have supplies with us, of course, but I mean, our main diet was fish and berries and things like that. And I just loved it, and I thought, well, this would be a great way to spend your life, being up in God's country, so to speak, and just be a forest ranger.
Were you a good student in school? I mean,
yeah, I was pretty good. I was a pretty good student.
B's,
yeah.
A's. What interests you mostly in school?
Well,
Any particular subject?
No, not really. I mean, I was pretty good in math, and I was pretty good. At least I thought I was pretty good in math until I went into preliminary college and got into trigonometry and calculus and things like that. Then it didn't interest me anymore.
No.
But I liked geography and basically, subjects to do with the outdoors.
Now, the education in Canada is different from the United States, is it not?
Well, in Canada, if you intend to go to college, they have a 5th year of high school called senior matriculation, which is almost equivalent to a first-year college year in the United States. And I intended to go to college in Canada and took that 5th year, flunked French authors and French composition.
My language.
Your language, and had to go back and do it again. And the exams in Canada are set up by the province. They're province-wide exam everybody in that particular grade takes. And eventually graduated, but then shortly after that I got married, so that kind of short-circuited my college ambitions.
So you stopped school at that point?
I stopped school at that point, right.
I see. Then you had to get a job, right?
Then I had to get a job.
So what kind of job did you do?
Well, then I kind of fell into engineering because I was kind of in that mode of education at the time. I thought it would be a mechanical or electrical engineer when I went to college. I wasn't sure which one. So I got in engineering and worked as a junior engineer for a couple of years at a parts and supply house in Toronto, and got married and immediately got laid off.
Oh, no.
So it was a matter of, what do I do now?
Survival.
Survival, right. Right.
So what did you do then?
So my wife was an American citizen, and her father was in the entertainment industry in Detroit, in a motion picture studio there that made a lot of industrial films for General Motors.
You mean there is a lot of film being done in Detroit?
A lot of
Educational film?
Educational, training films, that kind of stuff. How-to type films for the salesman, the mechanic, whatever that all the automobile companies use. In those days, there were about 3 companies in the United States that specialized in doing that, and this one particular company was the prime contractor for General Motors. So I went there in the summertime because he said, well, come on over here and work. I need a lot of extra people to work as electricians, studio electricians on the sets, grips, property men, people
Now,
like
what
that.
did you know about electricity?
Nothing. Nothing.
So you learn on the job.
So I learned by doing. That's correct.
You learn on the job.
So I did that for a couple of months, and the money was pretty good, and I thought, well, this isn't a bad way to make a living. So went back to Canada to apply for a resident visa to move to the United States, and got a job in Toronto as working in a factory that made electron tubes for electronics. This is like in 1955, when before the age of the transistor, basically.
Yes.
And all the women there all the employees there were women mostly, And I was a foreman over these women. I didn't have the faintest idea how to, you know, what I was doing, but like Errol Flynn said in one of his movies, carry on. You know, I just said to the women, carry on and do your thing, and I'll just kind of supervise, right.
Then what happened? Now,
Well,
you're still not working in the industry, right?
No,
right
no.
now.
Then I finally got my visa and moved back to Detroit.
How long does it take? 6 months?
It took
a year?
it took about 3 months, I guess.
months.
Right.
So now you go back to Detroit.
Go back to Detroit, live with my in-laws, with my new wife, and she's now pregnant. And so then I start working in the industry there. Well, the union is pretty strong in the industry, as you know, and even in Detroit it is. And so I had to
Now,
work.
could you work as a non-union person?
Well, you can get a permit to work as long as all the union people are already working, you know.
I see.
So there'd be times when I'd start on a job and then really like it, and then maybe some other show would shut down or some other studio would lay off a lot of people, and then they would come and take my place. And so I'd be out of work.
Because you did not belong to the
Because I
union
don't
at the
belong to
time.
the union, right.
But what different jobs did you do at the time?
Oh, I was basically a studio electrician, where I set all the lights in the studios,
Mm-hmm.
like in a motion picture studio. The jobs are not so specialized there. I mean, you can be an electrician, you can be a grip, you can be a property man, all in the same studio, where here you're in different classifications. And I worked as a stagehand.
Would you explain to the young people what a grip is, in case they don't know?
A grip is the guy who is basically the jack of all trades on a set. He builds dolly tracks for camera dollies. He builds, he mounts cameras in some of the weirdest places. He sets a lot of diffusion on lights and things like that for, you know, working with a lighting gaffer. He's really a very valuable and unrecognized person in the industry.
In the industry.
That he really is.
So you worked as a grip too there?
I worked as a grip. I worked as a...
And now, did you begin to enjoy working on a set, working with lights?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. It was a great experience. And I worked in theater a lot. I got in as a stagehand, and I worked as spotlight operators on ice shows and shows on the stage like My Fair Lady and shows like that. And I didn't like that as well as I like working in a motion picture studio.
Okay. So now you're in Detroit. You're still not doing sound.
No. Well, as I was working at the studio, they had a permanent sound department there. One of the gentlemen that worked in that department got sick, and he had to leave for 6 or 8 months. And so the head of that department came to me and asked me if I'd be interested in learning sound. I said, I don't know anything about it. And they said, that's okay, we'll teach you. So I went in
What luck.
into that department and worked in the back, what they call the transfer room, re-recording room, machine room, and learned the basics of what happens to a soundtrack after it's been recorded on a set or on a location, what all the steps and processes that it goes through.
Now, what brings you to Hollywood from Detroit?
Well, I think anybody who works in the business long enough wants to try Hollywood. They want to come out here where, you know, it's the so-called big time and
Yes.
see if they can make it. And I had worked on several Hollywood productions back east that were originating out of here, a couple of feature films. And you just have to make the move. You just have to say, okay, I want to do it.
I'll take a chance.
I'll take a
Now,
chance.
you arrived here. Did you know anybody in this town?
No.
Did you get a job immediately?
No.
Did you starve immediately?
Yes?
What did you do?
Well, I had a couple of names of people from Detroit that had moved out here, and I looked them up,
Yes.
and they steered me different places, and basically, I was not in the union out here. I was in the union back east, but being in Hollywood, Hollywood has their own rules, and you have to get in this union out here to work. Basically, my
What does it
experience...
take? What does it take to get into the union?
Well,
here,
it's
or the
a
sound?
process of
Do you have to have a certain quota? A certain
no, you have
pay?
to, first of all, you have to decide what you are. You can't say, I just want to get a union, be a jack of all trades. You have to be a sound man or a cameraman or sound mixer or whatever. I mean, it's broken down that way. And then you have to prove that you're capable of doing the job. And then the Producers Association in Hollywood has a setup that's called what do they call it? It's a
Apprenticeship?
well, no, they basically approve you. You have to prove to them that you're qualified to do the job before you even get in the union. And so I did that by using a lot of recommendations and,
From Detroit?
from other people. Well, no, from here. They have to be jobs you worked on here or out of this
I see.
town. But
So then you started to work in sound.
then I
What was the
started,
first
well, I was doing sound back there. I mean, I gradually went through the process of being a boom operator, a recordist, all these steps that you get to before you become a mixer. So you can do those jobs. And then I started doing that before I moved here. And then, so I decided I want to be a sound mixer here. I mean, this is what I want to be, a production sound mixer. So I got approved and in the union and all that stuff.
And you started
Then
to
I had
work
to go find a job. You know, and so it's a lot of
Do you
work.
have an agent?
No,
I mean,
I do not.
You don't?
No.
You do the legwork yourself?
Right. Hmm.
I see.
So I started doing commercials. You know.
Oh, yes. May I? Now, this is, can you focus on this? This is the equipment that you carry with you. It's not the equipment that you have on the set, right?
That's correct.
This is.
That's more of documentary style shooting.
Yes.
Hmm.
Okay, and this one is also. This was in Africa, wasn't it?
Well, that was in Ecuador.
In Ecuador. In
Right,
Ecuador.
in Ecuador.
Same thing. You're using the same.
It's all handheld.
Portable. Handheld.
equipment, right.
Now, this is a picture in which you have all the equipment that you use on a set.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm. It varies from job to job, but the basic.
You have this.
The basic heart of the equipment is that recorder right there, which is called a Nagra recorder,
Yes.
and that's the medium. It's 1/4-inch tape, and the dialogue or whatever sound you're recording is recorded on that machine, fed through microphones and mixing panels
In
and
here.
whatever. Yes.
Now, what is you're now working in series, right?
Series.
What is your day, your work day?
Very long.
When do you start and
We
what do you
start
do
anytime.
exactly?
Well, we start nowadays. We can start any time really, but working during the day, you'd probably start anywhere between 6:30 and 7 o'clock in the morning. Your day is a minimum 12-hour day. All shows are budgeted. All TV shows are budgeted for 12-hour days, and a TV series is an episode is usually shot in 7 days. So you figure it's 7 12-hour working days for an hour episode of a drama series.
Now, you get there at 6:30. What do you do? You set up with...
Well, I have a crew. I have 2 other people that work with me now. I have a boom operator and I have what they call a utility sound technician.
What is the difference? The boom is the guy who...
Yeah, he uses
pulls-
a fishpole boom, or he
Yeah.
uses a regular studio boom on a perambulator in the studio.
And what does the other guy do?
And the other guy is basically in charge of the equipment. He sets the equipment up, checks it all out in the morning, keeps it all clean and up to date, and works as a second boom man when you need one, and
Handles the cable?
handles all the cables, correct. And he's the guy who sets it up in the morning, and then we, if we have a 6:30 call, they usually want to start shooting by 7 o'clock. Actors are there maybe an hour ahead of time, and they're ready to hit the set by 7. So you don't have a lot of time to stand around and drink coffee usually.
Now, what is your job precisely the moment I, as an actress, start speaking? What do you do?
I record your dialogue, your voice. Okay?
And?
My job is to get the cleanest possible dialogue track, for use in the movie or the television show.
Now,
And,
what would you call an unclean track?
Well, when you're in a studio, you're pretty much in controlled conditions, so you don't have near the problems that you do when you're on location. But you could be out next to a freeway, you could be next to a construction site across the street,
An airport, maybe?
an airport, and sometimes you cannot get a perfectly clean track, but you do the best you can. There are ways of suppressing it. There are ways of talking with the director about maybe changing a location, or the location manager sometimes can arrange to shut down some sounds that they weren't there when they scouted the location.
Can you
Okay.
really influence a director in changing location?
Oh yeah, sometimes you can.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the director has the right to say, ready, action, and cut.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever get the chance to say cut?
Depends on the director.
Explain.
Sometimes I can, if we have a problem, say a plane is flying over and obviously it's going to ruin the track.
Uh-huh.
Some directors want you to stop immediately and say, cut it. Why have the actress or the actor go through the whole scene and not be usable? Other guys or other directors, they want you to just don't say anything. I'm the director. I say cut. And then go tell them about it later on. And they'll say, well, I'm not going to use it. Or where was it in the dialogue? Where was it in the scene? Perhaps that part they're going to cover in a closer shot or in another scene. And let them make the decision whether they can be used or not.
Can you explain how this works a little bit?
Well,
Now, is this on battery or is this on...
it runs either way. It runs, mostly we use them on batteries. It's basically a 1/4-inch tape recorder is what it is. It's electronically synced to the film camera so that when the film is shot with 35 millimeter film, and this is recorded on 1/4-inch tape. A couple of processes later, the picture and the sound come out in sync.
I see. I see. Now, the day is over for you, okay? What do you do with all the sound that you've recorded?
It gets handed into, sometimes I deliver it to a transfer house. Sometimes, if you're working on a major studio lot, they do the transfer work, and you give it to a driver or run over to the sound department, and they have a crew that works all night usually, and they'll transfer this 1/4-inch tape to a 35 millimeter magnetic sprocketed film or tape.
Complicated words you're using right now.
Yes.
Sprocketed mean with the little holes
With the
on
holes
the
down the
side.
side, right.
On the
And then
side.
that's delivered to the editor, who in the morning will take that soundtrack, and the picture's already gone to the lab, and the print has already been developed in the lab, and they will sync up the sound and the picture, and then you'll see yesterday's work maybe by 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning.
In other words, when you said you work 12 hours on the set, if you cannot deliver the sound to the studio or to somebody else, and you have to take it to a lab, you're working another hour,
Oh, sure.
an extra hour.
That's very common in commercials. If you do a commercial here and you're shooting in somebody's house or whatever, your day's over, you wrapped all your equipment, you put it back in your car or your truck or whatever, and then the production assistant will say, now we use such and such a studio to do our sound transfer, so would you please drop it off? You might be in Santa Monica or someplace, and you have to go into Hollywood someplace and drop it off at, 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So that's part of the job too.
That's part of the job. Now, I skipped a little bit because I wanted to describe the equipment that you have and your day's work. The young people over there, I'm sure, are very interested. Is it a well-paid job?
It can be a well-paid job, yes. When you work, that's the key. You make very good money when you work, and you just have to learn how to budget your money for the times you don't work.
Same thing with acting,
Right.
actually. Now, I'm sure everybody wants to know, how did you get your first break working in a series? You were doing commercials, you were doing educational. How did you
Actually,
break in?
I did a movie called On the Nickel that Ralph Waite, is an actor who you probably know,
Yes.
produced, wrote, and directed. And he was doing this little feature, and I somehow got on this film. And this is before I did any television series. This was,
Yes.
I'd done a couple of features before this, but this was in L.A., and I did this movie, and the first AD on the show knew somebody at Warner Brothers Studios.
Yes.
And recommended me to do, at that time the Walton series was going on. He was working on the Waltons, and so was Ralph still doing the Waltons. He recommended me to somebody over there, and I went over there, and I didn't know the politics of studio lots. I just went over to see this person, and they hired me to do a miniseries, actually, television miniseries called Scruples.
So, in other words, making friends along the way
Yes,
helps.
yes,
Networking
that's right.
helps.
That's right.
That's why we try to tell all the young people over there, when you get here, make friends, because you never know what they're going to do next.
That's right. There used to be a saying in theater that don't make the usher your enemy because he may own the theater next week.
Same thing.
The same thing.
Okay. So now you got in Scruples, and then you got Heart to Heart. Now, when you are not in a series, that's unemployment, right?
That's correct.
And you can get unemployment? I see. Then do you go and beg for jobs, or are you recommended sometimes?
Well, sometimes you're recommended. Sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes usually when you're working is the best time to find more jobs because you're working on a set and more people are in contact with other people, so you tend to know what's going on more. When you're at home,
That's interesting.
it's very difficult to know what's happening. You can read the trades and things, but usually by the time you see that movie or show in the trades, it's already been staffed, so you have to get into the kind of in the chain before that happens. And it's basically word of mouth. You make phone calls. Sometimes you just kind of go hang out places, wander around, and somebody will say, "Oh yeah, Don, you're not working? Well, we have this thing tomorrow," or whatever, And
But you have to keep your
but you have
ears
to
open
keep
all the
your
time.
ears open all the time.
Okay, we're getting to that magic mark of the 3 minutes in which I ask my guests to speak directly to either the young people or to the parents or the educators and recommend whatever you feel is correct at this point.
Okay, well, to parents and teachers of young people who are bent on coming to Hollywood, I would say that rather than discourage them if they really want to do that, is to help them by maybe helping them to save a little nest egg, because when you come out here you have to have somebody to live on. You have to be able to be aware that you're going to have to do something besides work in the film industry in order to live and pay the rent. But if you can get a job back home in a local television station or work on local TV commercials where you can actually get on a set and work with people and see what things that people do. A job is anything, as a production assistant, a gopher, whatever, just to get on the set and meet people. And when you do get to Hollywood, the same thing applies. Try to get a job locally in local commercials or whatever, as anything, maybe an assistant to a producer or assistant to a director. Assistant to anybody, so you can get on the set and see what people do, because it seems like all the young people want to be directors and producers, but they don't realize that there are thousands of jobs in this industry that are out here that you can make a good living at, and but they need to know at some point what they want to do. They have to make a decision at some point in their career. Okay, I want to be a sound man or a cameraman or a grip or electrician, makeup person, wardrobe, whatever. And just do that. If you know anybody out here, if anybody from your town happened to come out here and made it, use that person to open a door for you if you can. Remember that your attitude is so critical. 50% of the job is, 50% of getting a job is your attitude. You work with 40 to 60 people on a major set, and a lot of them have some pretty good egos going for them, so you really have to be able to get along with people. And realizing that Hollywood is a business. You know, people make movies to make money, and if you can save them money, you can do your job more efficiently, you can do it quicker, then you're going to get hired. If not, you're not going to get hired.
Thank you. I would like to thank Don for sharing his experiences and his expertise with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep watching us, because we keep watching out for you. Be well. Don't lose faith. Thank you. Till next time. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.